Suspect is the actual individual who rented that vehicle, or if someone else rented the vehicle and wound up in the hands of this suspect. We don't know the answer to that yet. We're working our sources. Shimon, stand by. I want to bring in Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. He's a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Very disturbing information, Senator. I know you're following this as well. What's your reaction, first of all, to this clear act of terror?
Well, Wolf, my first reaction is to say that my thoughts and prayers are with those who've lost loved ones or family members this afternoon in this terrorist attack in Lower Manhattan, and to pray for those who are injured for their recovery, and to express my gratitude for the first responders, the law enforcement professionals who responded promptly and were able to prevent this terrorist from killing anyone beyond those who were victims in this tragic attack. Earlier this week, just yesterday, we had a hearing here in the Senate where we asked the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, about what we can expect as the amount of territory that ISIS controls in the Middle East is shrunk through action by the United States military and our coalition forces. And one of the things they said is we will see ISIS around the world try and carry out attacks. We, of course, don't yet know whether this individual is affiliated with ISIS. I don't mean to jump to that conclusion, but Mayor de Blasio said he is viewing this as a terrorist attack, and certainly given the method and what we know so far about what the man's alleged to have said as he leapt out of the vehicle, it seems likely that that will prove to be the case. So we here in the Senate have been paying attention to the increased risk that we'll see of lone wolf attacks around the world as ISIS loses more territory, and we'll have to wait to see as facts develop whether that's in fact what's happened today in Manhattan.
The mayor of New York City, as you pointed out, Mayor de Blasio, said this was an act of terror, a particularly cowardly act of terror, and he also said it was an action, quote, intended to break our spirit. I know you've been well briefed by U.S. intelligence. You're a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Is there hard intelligence now that with the ISIS setbacks in Syria and Iraq, whether in Mosul or Raqqa, their caliphate now clearly falling apart, that these kinds of terror attacks may actually intensify overseas, whether in Europe or the United States?
Well, there's a number of countries in Africa in particular, Wolf, where they're expecting to see increased ISIS-affiliated activity. Many of the foreign fighters who went to the caliphate, as they called it, in Syria and Iraq, are now returning to their countries of origin, and they're scattered all around the world. But a significant number of them came from northern and western Africa. And so one of my concerns is that we will see more and more countries that have big ungoverned spaces, much as Afghanistan had before 9/11, where you'll see more isolated cells that are ISIS affiliated, folks who've gotten combat experience in Syria and Iraq, who will return to countries like Niger or Mali or Nigeria or Tunisia or elsewhere across the arc of northern and western Africa, where a lot of folks fled in order to support ISIS in Syria and are now returning back to their countries of origin. We've had a number of briefings on the security threat to our partners and allies in those regions. I also think we have to be concerned, to your question, about some of those folks seeking to return to their countries of origin in Europe or even to the United States.
Yeah, and as you point out, that attack that resulted in the death of 4 American soldiers was an ISIS-affiliated terror attack in Niger. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. We're staying on top of the breaking news in New York City. 8 people killed in this terror attack, more than a dozen injured. We're getting more